Welcome back to another episode of Shire Knights, where we talk about all things 40k. In tonight's episode, we're going to be discussing a lot of tournament stuff that's been happening. And tonight, I'm joined by Connor
Hello.
and our captain, Rybo.
Hello, hello.
And the host is myself, Papa Nurgle's finest, Alan. It's good to have you boys back. And as we're just going to dive in and get things started. We've been at a lot of tournaments recently, and myself, Rybo, and Mark, we attended another RTT number 2 at Dominion Air, located at 135 Main Street in Ayr. A great wee venue, and again, another great event to attend. The tables are always great down there, as well as the opponents.
Yeah, it's an awesome venue there. It's been great every time we've been there. The guys there are lovely.
Yeah. I certainly went back with the vision of trying to defend my title. You'll find out why that's funny in a minute when Rybo explains what army he was taking, and that is because I was still taking Death Guard. So Rybo, just want to hit into how you're...
Yeah, so I've been doing I brought my Nids out of their crypt that they were in recently since they got their new book. Nids was my first ever army for 40k. So brought them out of retirement, added a few additions to them to make it more of a meta list, and taking them along to Dominion Air for their RTT. And then since then, I've also taken them to the Forth Valley GT, which was the weekend just past there.
Yes, yeah. Now, how's the FAQ? How did that work out at Dominion? Because that just came out literally, I think, what, day or two beforehand?
Yeah, so for Dominion, they ruled that the major changes weren't going to take effect, as it did come out 2 days before the event. Which was fair, but to be honest, even with the changes, I don't think it changes much. All it does is reduces the mortal wound output that you can spit out with a Maliceptor, and also reduces the survivability of things like your Harpies and your Flyerant. If you want to take them off the board now, you can't do that at the end of the turn. It's at the start. You have to remove them from the board. I don't really see it being major. I mean, the changing when you remove the model from the end to the start is quite a big change, but I think it was needed. It did make it a little bit too strong, and Nids are still too strong, and we'll see what happens with them at the end of the month. Hopefully with these points changes, we see a bit more of balance coming across everything.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, of course. I think it definitely just makes an impact with particularly what you're saying with Encircle of the Prey, that you have to do it at the end at the end of end or start movement. But it has to be done in the movements phase regardless, so it literally means that you have to be a little bit more selective with how you want to play your Hive Tyrant or any of your other characters. So you can't just send your Hive Tyrant in and I'll be like, I'll see what he does, and then you'd have that safety net just to be like, oh, okay, he didn't do what I wanted to do, I'm going to make him disappear. So you would have had to have, well, you do now have to play a little more selective with him, which I think is definitely needed considering just how strong he can be for such little points.
Yeah, no, it definitely sounds, especially with me being on the other side of not on the Nid train at the moment.
Yeah, you're holding.
I'm still holding
the line with the Death Guard.
Yep, holding it strong.
Yeah.
It's a case of, if you don't get turn one, you're kind of up against Nids. If you can weather the first turn storm, you've maybe got a chance, but there's not many armies out there at the moment that can deal with that, and especially when, like you said before, when you've got Encircle the Prey, you can just lift a model off at the end, and then if another character goes in, or even a unit goes in and clears something, you've also got the overrun strat where they can then make another move and move away potentially, and all of a sudden you're left with a hole in your army, and where there would have been models to maybe attack, they're no longer there, so you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah, of course.
They definitely seemed like a nice change. And also Zoanthrope's getting what they should have had at the start, the synapse ability. That seemed just a wee typo there.
Yeah, in
Yeah,
fairness, it's not really been anything that's kind of made a difference, to be fair, because I think a lot of us just kind of assumed that's the way it was meant to be intended. So
Yeah, I think even as a non-player of Nits at the moment, I think it would have been a bit silly not to have played it that way.
yeah. Historically, they've always been synapse creatures as well. So, it wasn't until the FAQ that I realized, oh, they don't actually have the synapse keyword. You know,
yeah.
It probably took a lot of people by surprise.
yeah, it's just one of those overlooked things. But so yeah, the RTT in air. Do you wanna run through quickly, kind of your games?
Yeah.
It's a 3-game tournament, so nice and
Yeah, so it was a great start to the tournament. I got Dark Angels. That always seem to be my nemesis at a tournament, just with the way that they play, not the way they're just as resilient with their only when they're on 4s. The permanent transhuman can always be a pain to chew through, and now we Armory Contempt and everything else on top of that. But my opponent Connell was a great guy to play against. And I just got a fortunate turn 1 where I went first and he had a lot of stuff still lying out in the open, just due to placement of terrain. He had obviously placed it in order that he got first and he would just jump onto it. But I just managed to overpower him in the middle of the board with Volkite shots and just loads of shots from the Plague Burst Crawlers, which I've been pulling into line of sight recently rather than having them shoot out of line of sight. And by about turn 2, I'd whittled him down in the middle enough that his 2 Brixie 10 Terminators on the other 2 points couldn't come out to do anything because he wouldn't be able to hold multiple points. So that game was kind of over pretty quickly, but it wasn't down to anything of me tabling him. It was just down to
you
the fact
monster, you filthy Death Guard player monster.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, Connell thought maybe he should have combat patrolled maybe a couple of the units, but I think at that point it was the Volkite power just
Yeah,
took over for that one. And then, which I'll just run through all my games quickly. I went to the second game against Fulvio, who was running Eldari.
yeah, he's a great opponent. I've played against him a few times. I think it was before the Codex update, so I've played him against his Custodes. But no, he's a lovely guy.
No, he was a great opponent again. Had a great game. It was Recover the Relics. It was sort of everything was placed behind terrain. There wasn't really much to see, but he did leave his Swooping Hawks out, which I think he was hoping to get turn 1 with. But I managed to then just again Volkite him off the board and then sweep round one side. But as always with Eldari, he popped off Eldritch Fire. Is it Eldritch Firestorm? Is that the
Eldritch Storm?
Eldritch Storm,
the big
yeah.
mortal wound thing that I think Warlocks buff the damage as well with it.
Yes, and he did that, and it just felt like fire at the time because he one-shotted a couple of the characters that were there. So that was something to learn in future because it is a big CP sink, but when it goes off hard. And it did take a couple out there. But no, that was a good close game. I think it was 81-70 in the end. And it is always that way against Eldari. Eldari and Nids always seem to be the sort of ability just to take Death Guard's feet from under them. But in this one, it just swung my way. Just a couple of things went right. I think the turning point in the game was he had his avatar ran across into one of my Plague Burst Crawlers, and when he hit it, I made all the saves on the invulnerable, and at that point, it was just disbelief. I think for both him and me. So that was good. And then my final game, I ended up going into Tau. I ended up playing Bruce Wade, which was a very fun game. It was surprising because I managed to not play Nids all weekend, which was, I'm not going to lie, kind of nice. Because we've had some practice games against yourselves, and it's been tough.
Yeah.
It's been super tough.
Yeah, I think lucky for some, the Nids all ended up having a civil war this tournament. I had to play
Yeah,
Nids twice, but I'll talk about that once you're done with your part.
yeah, yeah, indeed. But no, it was a fun game. We had 3 hammerheads. I've came up against sort of 2 to 3 hammerheads before at previous team tournaments. I know what to kind of expect. I sort of left out the Plague Burst crawlers because I knew he would have to move out to shoot me. So I sort of tried to give him a target to shoot at, knowing that they can't be one-shotted by a hammerhead, but they can obviously. He took 2 down to 2 wounds, and then he killed another one with the crises. But I thought it was better to lose them than to lose the Volkites with the sheer number of shots and just the overwhelming firepower. And then he also had 2 of the, what's the transports called again now?
The Devilfish?
Devilfish, yeah.
Devilfish, that's the one. So he had 2 of them. He got first turn, pre-game move. They were in my deployment. Breachers jumped out, and then they were just shooting some poxwalkers and cultists for fun. But the initial turn felt like it was going to be devastating. But like I said, I'd had a few games now against Tau where it's like the first part can feel overwhelming, but Death Guard do hit back hard, and if
Yeah.
like when he brought everything in, it was in near the Death Shroud, and the Death Shroud Flamers picked up just the wee units that were easy enough to pick up. I luckily had 2 CP and would normally put this on Cultists, but I spent it to keep them on the board, and the Unity 2 was able to obsect to a point, which obviously obsect Bruce, and then the Volkites just came out to play, and then it was just a case of I whittled him down to so much that he didn't have anything left to play with, and he had taken to the last as well, so he was trying to hide his battle suits and other things out of the way. So it was actually turned into quite a convincing win, considering how
Yeah,
oppressive
you
it felt at
survived
the
these
moment.
kind of alpha strike, really, didn't you? And
Yeah,
just
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you were durable like Death Guard are, and it just kind of
I kind of worked
how
in
it
the
runs
favour.
out of steam.
It was quite another fun moment when he can't auto explode the devilfish, but there is that possibility of rolling a 6, and he managed it, and then it's within 6d6 damage, and again I lost a
Oh,
character because he rolled a 5. So in this tournament I learned that keep your characters away from anything that can explode and anything that can do Eldritch Storm, because
yeah,
they will die to them. But no, overall it was a great tournament again, and just really enjoy it, didn't I?
yeah. Well, I can run through my games, and
Yeah.
then we can say the placing where we placed. Well, we know you're on 3 wins, but there's a few people with 3 wins at an RTT.
Yes, indeed.
And you won it last time you were there, so.
I did indeed.
But my first game was against Jamie and his Tau, and it was a rough game for him. So my Nid list has Venom Thropes in it, so they give an aura of -1 to hit to everything, and I managed to get first turn, and I noticed in Jamie's list he had a lot of kind of Riptides and like the kind of battle suit squads, which might have been a threat if but he only had 1 unit with marker lights in his army, and that was 1 unit of Pathfinders. My Harpy moved over the unit of Pathfinders and killed 6 with mortal wounds. And then he failed leadership on them, and some more ran, and he was only left with 2 marker lights at the end of the end of that turn. And then I was also popping Riptides with Harpies, and it was the moment he lost his marker lights, he was hitting everything in my army on 5s with most things. Besides, I think some commanders and whatnot, because Tau have a standard ballistic skill of 4, but they use the marker lights to try and buff that. But it just, when you lose the marker lights, you lose the kind of thing. So I think he managed to wound one harpy quite well, but that was about it for his first turn. And then, like, my psychic was then in range with my zone thropes, and my Maleceptor was starting to run up, and my Screamer Killer was starting to run up, and the Parasite managed to 1v10 a unit of Fire Warriors in close combat, so that was great. And take an objective off them. So yeah, that was a great game. We both had a laugh. It was just rough on him, but I still, try and make sure your opponent's having a good time, though, as much as it was devastation. You want to have a laugh, make sure you're just chatting, having a good time. But
that is an important part of it at a tournament, especially when you're maybe running a list that is more competitive than what somebody else might be bringing, is to just make sure that you're chatting, they're having fun, that way. That
at the end of the day, you're spending your weekend there. You wanna not waste your time away from work and whatnot.
And we thank him for his service for playing Nids that tournament.
Clendathu remembers.
Indeed. Indeed.
But my game 2 was Shire Knight and Nids Civil War, because Mark was also in attendance at this tournament, and he was using his Nids, and it was Nids versus Nids, and it came down to really a first turn roll. Both of us were running Leviathan. We had transhuman monsters, so it was just who could get the better dice spike. So I got first turn. I killed these big things. I think I managed to kill both harpies and the Flyrant turn 1, which was an incredible turn 1. Or maybe it was just both harpies and an injured Flyrant. It was something along the lines of that anyway. So from that point, he struggled to then retaliate, and it was just this kind of back and forth of a losing battle for him from that point. But no, it was a great game, against Mark. We have a good laugh. But no, it was just kind of a dice. I gave a dice. Well, the whole games I gave a dice, but that really did just come down to the odds. And yeah, then after that game, I went straight on to another Nid mirror match against Colin Greaves. He's another great lad. Once again, we both kind of looked at each other and he says, well, we just roll for first turn, then go to the pub. It was another one of, if he gets first turn, he's going to alpha strike me. If I get first turn, I'm going to alpha strike him. It's just how it kind of goes.
Certain does in mirror matches as well. I've been in that similar position where sometimes I don't particularly like playing a mirror match, because it is just a case of the opponent knows all of your rules. The opponent knows how your army works. Your opponent knows that there's no sort of like, okay, I can do this and I can do that. They're like, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and it's just like you said, who can roll the better dice.
The game against Colin, the lists weren't completely identical. I mean, they weren't for Mark's game as well. Our lists weren't completely identical, but they were very similar. Colin's list had a bit more gargoyles, and he also had the Foot Tyrant with the Relic Venom Cannon, and this was pre-FAQ, so he had 2 Venom Cannons on his Tyrant, and one of them was a Relic. But I think the game taking a real big turn. It was turn 2 or 3. Basically, he never managed to kill a thing from army. He never managed to really wound a thing from army besides, I think, Ripper Swarms that the Parasite spawned from infecting a unit. And there's just not a whole lot he could do. And he ended up having to charge Old One Eye with a Maleceptor to try and get Stranglehold, because everything failed to wound. And Old One Eye fought back and one-shot a Maleceptor. So that really just, the turn of him failing with everything just did not go well for him at all. He just kind of lost from that point. But no, once again, it was a great game. One thing we didn't talk about Dominion Air is the fact that they have player placed terrain. I don't know how you found it, Alan, but I thought that most of the time me and my opponents were just placing the terrain in a similar manner that you would kind of WTC the terrain to try and make it fair. At some points, basically, I think player placed terrain is advantageous for lists that are very defensive and cagey, because you can cover up all the objectives kind of that you want to get behind, and then you can just sit there. So I'm not the biggest fan of the player placed aspect. I prefer preset, but I can see the pros and cons from it as a tournament organizer. I think you really need to tweak some things with the pack though. So like in the pack, all buildings have to be 4 inches away from each other. But if there's an objective in the middle of the board, you can just put the terrain piece on the middle of the board, just slightly to the side of the objective, and then that stops your opponent putting any building close by. So it's just one of those things that you can stop that and kind of be
It's
quite
sort of
gamey with it in a way.
Yeah, it's sort of a mini game in itself.
Yeah.
If you like, and I must say I prefer just place terrain because I found out at the weekend, if you practice and play with player place terrain, you can become very good at it. And like you said, for defensible armies, so my army is a bit defensible, that way. I don't need to go forward. I can just sit where I sit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably all my opponents will confirm, all of my dense terrain sat at the back of the board because I don't want dense terrain in the board. So it just sits at the back. It does nothing. Like I had bits of terrain just sitting where I didn't want them because I don't need to be -1 for shooting or anything like that, or movement. Well, I don't suffer many things to movement, but cultists that I want to run somewhere. So I'm very much like just putting probably stuff that would be in the middle of the board just at the back. And it's like you say, it can be very, very, very the way it is. However, when I did play full wheel that match, we did try and make it a bit more identical in what we were doing, which was quite nice. And you could talk that with your opponent at the start, whatever, that way type thing. But like you
That's
said,
what it is.
I had the game against Connor. He plopped his bit in the middle, and because I knew that he was going to do that, I made it an advantage to me by placing the bit of terrain closer, but making it so I just could run out, but still be partially behind the building with some units. So, it just dependent on the army, that way. I'm surprised you needed any terrain with your half piece.
And everything -1 a hit. It's just blocking shots and whatnot. To be fair, the terrain wasn't that big of a part in the NID games, but for other armies it does.
It certainly does, like shooting lanes and other bits and pieces. You can create stuff on your own board, and if you know how to do that, then it's brilliant. It's a great, like we've seen it at LVO and things like that, when you see the top players like Richard Ziegler and stuff like that using it, and they're using it to the best of their ability, that way. And you can really see it come on.
But end of the day, you're on 3 wins.
Yes, I'm indeed. You're on 3 wins.
3 wins. Where did you place?
Well, it was like, all I'm going to say, it was like Bathgate all over again. I placed 3rd, which was actually quite nice and surprising. I'm not going to lie. I did not come down after after knowing that NIDS had just come out. I was expecting to see just like NIDS everywhere. But yeah, 3rd place. I was very happy with that. I hadn't expected to actually place in the top 3 at all. And Rival, where did you place, sir?
I placed 2nd. So yeah, much like Bathgate.
Yes.
But for this tournament, we scored the exact same.
We did indeed.
We did. I think it came down to the tiebreaker, which was SOS, I believe.
I think so. I
Strength of
think
schedule.
it just came down to the fact you probably had a top knot and I didn't, mate. That's probably what
That's
it
what
was.
it is. That's what it was. Yeah,
That was
fancy.
that.
Here we
But
go.
no, it was great, and
Captain
a
comes
special
first, eh?
indeed. But a special mention to Chris McShay, who finished first with Grey Knights.
Yeah.
He beat all his opponents on the way up and played Ryan Stevenson. I think in the last game I was on the table next to them.
Yep.
Looks like they had a really fun game. Just again, I think Ryan had probably about the same problem as Colin had at one point. It was a case of everything just whiffed on a turn, which sometimes your dice can just leave you. But yes, that was another great tournament. Looking forward to RTT number 3. Maybe I'll take a second place and get 1, 2, and 3 for that, and that'll be me hat trick. But shall we move on to the next tournament that's just been this weekend? Which I unfortunately couldn't make, so for reasons out with the Warhammer and World, I just had to stay at home this time. Had to leave the death cards behind.
Shocking. Shocking,
I know.
Shocking.
I know.
But yeah, we'll talk about the Forth Valley GT. So the Forth Valley GT was one that I ran, but also played in. Some people think that there was an ongoing joke of a TO playing in his own tournament, but that has been the way that our club has ran tournaments since the beginning. We've always ran the tournaments for people in the club that play 40k, and so the TO always plays in his own tournament because, you know, they get to join in on the fun. So I was wearing 2 hats on the tournament, running about TOing and playing in it. But it wasn't just us on the podcast in attendance to that. Obviously, Alan, you've said that you weren't there, but there was
So we had Connor, who's in the chat with us.
A lot of Shire Knights, yes.
There was also Mark in attendance.
Yes.
There was also Chris Jones, all the way from Ayr. He was in attendance. Yes. And then we had some of our new recruits in attendance. There was Gary Duffy playing Nids. We had Callum Rooney playing Custodes.
Yep.
And then we had Ryan Cook, who plays guard.
Yeah.
I have to give it to Ryan, rocking guard in this current meta.
I know.
He's the boy.
Man.
Brave boy. But you've forgotten one person. Oh, he's stumbling again.
Oh, I'm stumbling.
You forgot Nick. Nick was also at the tournament.
Nick Malone.
There you go. Nick was with his...
What did you think I did?
But yeah, so what we're going to do is I think we'll probably touch up on the other guys' games in the next podcast episode, because, you know, there's a lot of us. There's a lot of games to go through.
Yep.
Why
not everyone playing Nids?
No, only 3 of us.
Only 3 of you, so that's very true. Might have been 4 if I'd been there.
Oh no, sorry, there was 4. There was 4 actually. No, I tell a lie.
There was 4. Yeah,
there was 4. Yeah, I miscounted. Yeah, no.
Might have been 5.
Out of the 4 people at the tournament, the 4 of us were running Nids, you know. Whoops. But no, we'll cover off myself and Connor's games, and then in the next episode we'll cover off the rest, hopefully, or we might need to divide it again because it is a lot of games. But on you go, Connor. What was your first game at the tournament, and say a little bit about your list?
Well, I think I can probably go into who got my first game with. Was when I seen the parents go up, it was a little bit of a chuckle, because it was a fellow Forth Valley Wargamers member. It was Brody McRae with his Custodes. I've played with Brody quite a few times at the club, so I expected what was going to be running into. But then of course I took Tyranids with naturally Leviathan. I think Leviathan is just too good right now to kind of dissuade to go to other side of factions. Maybe it'd be like Gorgon or Jurgemungur.
Jormungdir or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. I think Leviathan right now is just too strong not to take it. So
Or just
given
easier
that,
to say?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, given that with like the new changes with the FAQ, decided to drop down from 2 Maleceptors to just 1 Maleceptor. I had 2 Screamer Killers. I think it's no surprise to anybody that was 2 Harpies, one with
Oh.
Synaptic Enhancement and the other with Voracious Ammunition, because it's
Oh,
a nice little choice giver. What else did we have? We had naturally the Flarent with the Reaper of Obliterax, and I was also trialing.
Surprised to see that one in your list, Connor.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was.
That's
a
a
hard
surprising choice for us, a Nid player.
The only thing that I had to think about a little bit was between what actually Warlord trait I gave him. I actually chose to go for Fight First, which I think is maybe something I'd change for Adaptive Biology for that 5 up Feel No Pain inherently, because there was a couple of times throughout the weekend that my Catalyst was denied, which was somewhat frustrating, and it just meant that if I had that 5 up Feel No Pain on the Hive turn, I could have then passed it off to to different units like my Harpy or such. But what else did I had? I had an Exocrine. I had two units of 3 warriors, a unit of gargoyles. What else did we have? And 2 units of Zoanthropes.
Zoanthropes.
Yes, they're nice little zappy brain bugs. They're brilliant. And what else did we have? We also had Zoanthropes and a Neurothrope. I
Nice.
believe that was the entirety of the list, but overall, you probably tell just by listening to what it is. It's very much psychic heavy, but it also has a lot of board control in terms where you can kind of spread out from both sides and do whatever you want to do, and have the extra ability to have kind of shooting components on top of with your X-Screen and your Harpy. And it also fights with the Screamer Killers, which I'm a big fan of them after kind of just trialing them. The Screamer Killers, they don't seem that too tricky, but then when they start charging into you with 11 attacks, -3 damage, you start quickly feeling the pain with them. But no, I thought they were brilliant. And going into that, it was my first game, like I mentioned, was against Brody with the Custodes, and it was pretty much what you'd expect against a Custodes list. The minute you start taking 1 unit or 2 units away from Custodes, it hurts twice as hard compared to like another unit, another army, just because they've got such few models. But funnily enough, the secondaries that I took were actually Psychic Interrogation, Banners, and Stranglehold. And it was only until about turn 2 that I'd left him with maybe 10% of his army that I recognised that I'd killed off all of his characters apart from Trajan. So it meant that I physically couldn't kill Trajan, so I just had to let him knock lumps out of me whilst I was trying to get my Psychic Interrogation away from him. So it was the first time I've ever rolled a 6 on my advance just to get my Maleceptor in the opposite direction of Trajan. But no, it was actually very funny. It was I think the score was 97 something. But it was actually a really fun game to start off the weekend. And then after that, going into my second game, it was actually Salamanders against a fellow Shire Knight, unfortunately. But of course, there's that many of us going to that weekend. It was bound to happen, regardless.
Yeah, I think there was a fair few Civil War games going on that tournament.
Yeah, a lot of friendships damaged that weekend, I think.
I think tested would be the right word.
Yeah.
And in saying that about Shire Knights, we forgot Mikey. Mikey was running Thousand Suns, his first tournament, and hopefully we'll be hearing from him soon.
Yeah, hopefully.
It wasn't just one you missed, it was 2 you missed, Alan. Come on, get your finger out, come on.
Honestly, I can't keep up with the growth. I'll get there. Get them tattooed down one arm.
But no, my second game was against Nick, who of course I think I can't remember the top of my placing, but where is he right now with Salamanders in terms of rankings?
Well, you talk about your game, I shall check. I am not 100% sure.
But until we clarify that,
it is rather high in the rankings, I know that much.
Yes, I will just say that Nick is a very good Salamanders player. He knows them inside and out. So I knew going into that it'd be a tricky game, considering we've had some kind of test matches before, so he knew roughly what my list did, so he knew how to counter it. But it pretty much meant on the opposite side that I kind of I had a rough idea of what I wanted to do with him. So going into that game, it was if you have any kind of idea of what you want to do with Tyranids, you have your 2 harpies that you just want to fly up the board, get them right as in amongst the enemy army, just to give them something to worry about, whilst you have your big bugs and your big zappy zone throats pushed up on the sides. But in this instance, I actually chose not to do that. I just put my harpies back as far back as I could and just moved them the minimum distance, 15 inches, just so they would still be in range to shoot stuff, but they wouldn't be in range of his nasty eradicators and I think it was aggressors, the flamethrowers.
Aggressors, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Anything that's auto hitting you is not where you want to be.
Oh no, absolutely, it was horrible, but it made the difference because by doing that, I gave him. It was. I felt like going into it, the best way I wanted to kind of play it out was just to limit how much he can shoot at me, but whilst moving everything up and kind of grabbing that board control.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it worked out. I think my first turn, he had 2 dreadnoughts. I managed to get one of them down to 2 wounds, and the other was pretty much, I think it was half bracket from the first turn. So I was happy enough with that. Kind of trading for my first turn, and I managed to get on top and get my stranglehold and stuff the first turn. And it pretty much, by me doing that, put him on the back foot, so he had to come to me, which wasn't really the way that he likes to play. He likes to play kind of sitting back and let the enemy come to him whilst he has the board control, and it kind of flipped it on him. And it pretty much went to that point. It was a very close game, and I think it came down to one very pendulum swinging moment that I think our friendship still hurting from.
No.
Yeah,
No.
it came down to one of the edge objectives where he held it with a unit of I believe it was intercessors, and I managed to get my Hive Tyrant stuck in and involved with it. And at that point, I think it was turn 3. I was running the Goaded to Slaughter Synaptic Imperative that you get from the Tyranid Warriors. It lets you do exploding 6s. So pretty much in that point, Hive Tyrant charged in, done all his mortal wounds and his shenanigans that he gets with the Reaper of Obliterax, and it managed to get him down to, I believe it was 1 model left from the Intercessor squad with 1 wound left. However, that was frustrating for me because if you know anything about Overrun, you have to finish the fight phase outside of engagement range of any enemy units to use that stratagem. So it pretty much meant because there was 1 unit left alive, my Hive Tyrant was just stuck there. He was just free as a daisy for anyone to come in with his big nasty eradicators to wipe him off the board. And then going into that, I went into next turn, and he forgot to fall back his intercessor. He forgot to fall back. So he's still in engagement range. Yeah. And it was one of those moments where we kind of had to sit and kind of talk about it for a couple of minutes because it was such a pendulum swinging moment that it meant that whoever got that, it would have changed the side of the board. But we pretty much just agreed to carry on as it was because I made the mistake of not applying my exploding 6s that would have killed that enemy, that last model off, and he made the mistake of not falling back. So it was kind of one of those ones. But overall, it was a very good game. It was just one of those ones where it came down to that pendulum moment, and we just had to talk it out. To be fair, but I think there's a lot of instances where you have games like that where if you just talk it out, you can kind of sort it out. And I've got. Yeah,
there's a lot of rules to remember in the game and things like that, and when you're playing to time and in certain circumstances, and you've both played against each other before, you know that way, so you're more concentrated. You know, it's easy done. When I was playing Fulvio, I had a moment where I charged at one side and I re-rolled for one side thinking I didn't have any more charges. Then I realised I did, and I could have used that reroll somewhere else. But hey, that happens, you know, where sometimes you have to live on your mistakes.
Oh no, of course. Like in any other game, it would be one of those things. But yeah, go for it, man, go for it. But if it was because it was such a pendulum swing.
No,
I was like, we had to talk about it.
No, there's that way. It's very not way. That was a precise time there where I would have been like, oh, I forgot about that. You know, could I reuse that CP there because I would never have used it on that. I didn't think I was charging with anything else, but because that was such a big thing, because it was Death Shroud going in, they would have minced them up. So yeah, no, I can appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
and your Flyrant definitely would have been feeling the pain of Eradicators.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think he'd be alive, living for much longer. But anyway, that was pretty much what happened after that game. It pretty much meant that I held board control for the next game turn and stuff, and it pretty much sealed the game on my side. But it was still a very kind of hard fought game. It wasn't very much like a walkover or anything by any means. But going into that, that was my second game. Going into my third game was actually against Nice Chris's friend that he brought along to the tournament. It was I'm trying to think of his second name. Forgive me. It was Chris anyway. Both Chris's came along, but Chris actually brought his Eldari with him. And I haven't had much experience, if at all, with Eldari, so I was very much going into it blind. I didn't actually know what they did, but having played Eldari, I can confidently say they have a lot of nice tricks up their sleeves. It definitely looks like a very appealing army that you could get nasty efficiency with it.
Yeah, they trade well. They definitely trade well.
Yeah, but it was one of those things that I quickly seen the kind of the pros and cons to the army. They're very, very good at just kind of getting some shots off and then just keep moving forward and grabbing board control. But it was one of those things. It's a very tricky spot right now for any player to come up against Nids. I don't envy them at all. The fact if you're going up against like a Leviathan big bug heavy list, like it's not even like at fault to them at all. It's just the fact that you cannot chip away. It's so much harder for any army to try and chip away at Leviathan right now, just because you can't. You're fairly transhuman. You're toughness 8, so like it's so much harder for like particularly like Aldari, where they've got kind of low strength, lots of shots outside of like their fire prisms and stuff. But it was a very interesting game, just because it gave me kind of an eyes on just what Aldari could do. We were just kind of having laughs at that point. To be fair, I think there was one point where I popped my gestation sack on my parasite. Oh, I actually forgot to mention I took a parasite. I popped the gestation sack. I spawned 4 Ripper Swarms, I believe, and he decided to fire everything. I think it was a unit of I can't remember the name of them. It was like Banshees or something like that. They fired in at all the Ripper Swarms, done me for 9 wounds at -0 AP. So straight away I'm thinking, oh, my Ripper Swarms are dead then. That's quite annoying because they're the one that giving me lookout sword to my parasite. And yeah, I rolled 6 dice, all 6s. And then I rolled another 3 dice, all 6s.
Yeah,
it was horrible.
I was playing on the table next to this, and my game got paused because I was too busy howling at the fact that Connor just managed to pass so many 6-up saves on some Rippers.
Yeah, this was the turn after that. My Harpy just got absolutely blown out the sky. And I just rolled 9 6s, just like it was nothing. It was one of those things I would never see that again in my puff. So it was literally like, can we just pause this game? I'm going to go out and put on a lottery ticket. But no, it was a really fun game. It was a really fun game. But that was the end of my third game for the first day on the Saturday.
And we'll stop you there on the first day. So you've gone 3 wins.
Yep.
Now we'll just go over to Ryan now and just see how Ryan did on his first 3 games.
Okay, we're splitting up a little bit. Okay,
split up a wee bit.
Yeah, so I had a Leviathan Tyrannid list as well.
Oh, surprise!
It had 2 Harpies with Venom Cannons. Ooh. It had a Hive Tyrant with a Reaper of Litrax. Oh, am I surprising you yet? Am I surprising you? Oh, of course it had wings. And a Dreadnought Glands. And I had a Neurothrope. And, I had 3 units of 3 warriors. But I have mines with Devourers instead of Death Spitters to try and clear a little bit of chaff.
Nice. I do like that.
I have a unit of Zoanthropes. I have a Maliceptor. I have a unit of Venomthropes. I have a Parasite, and I have, to mix it up a little bit, I have Old One Eye, a Screamer Killer, and a normal Carnifex with the increased ballistic skill and a Venom Cannon. Which is the kind of, that's the little mix-up-y bit I mean, I don't. After playing it in 2 tournaments now, I don't rate Old One Eye all that much. He's good, and you can also make that shooty Carnifex hit on 2s, reroll 1s, but he's very pointsy, and he dies really fast to mortal wounds. He has a 5-up feel no pain, but he still dies just as quick. He can be annoying in the right circumstances, but yeah, I think there's better options for the points. My first game that I drew was against Chris Chung that I met at Dominion Air. I never played him there, but I was playing a game next to his table that he was playing at, and I noticed his Ultramarines army, and he's actually got little smoke made out of like cotton wool and stuff like that. It's really cool. So when we were at Dominion, I commented on that, and funnily enough, I played him in the first game of the event. So yeah, he was a lovely guy. He was running Gilliman, a Redemptor Dread, Tiggy, some Eradicators, and some Hellblasters, I believe they're called, the plasma gun Primaris guys.
That's correct, yeah, Hellblasters.
Yeah,
nice.
he was running some of them. So going into the game, I knew my first main threat was either going to be the Redemptor or the unit of Eradicators. He combat squadded the Eradicators, so that was kind of interesting. Because I had to try and split my fire to take them out. But he got first turn and kind of moved these models forward. Bounced. I think he'd done 4 wounds with an Eradicator, and that was all he got in the first turn because of my -1 to hit aura, and then my invuns on everything for my adaptive. So then, yeah, the Harpies came swarming up and ripped a hole in the side of a Redemptor. My Zoanthropes actually advanced up because he moved an Eradicator squad up to shoot at my my big bugs, which bounced, and then my Zoanthropes advanced up, got into range, and smited them. And I think I'd done like 7 mortals to them. So they were hurting from that, and then also a little bit of extra shooting from my Carnifex kind of wiped them out. Oh, and I had an Execrene in my list. Forgot to mention that one. The Execrene Fire Name. So
you had more points.
I had more points after everything I said. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So by the end of the first turn, I think he had 1 Eradicator left on a couple of wounds. He's lost his Dreadnought, and he lost the other squad of 3 Eradicators. He still had Big Bobby G, some Hellblasters, and some Marines, like standard Primaris Marines. But it wasn't a lot to claw back from. And turn 2, my Flyerant got into combat with Gilliman. Andy heroically intervened with Tigerius, so I charged in, but he heroically intervened with Tigerius. I split my attacks and swiped down Gilliman, and then put Tigerius. He managed to roll 3 6s for his saves, but because I got 3 wounds through on Tigerius, I'd done 3 mortals. So I injured him at least. And then Gilliman failed to get back up on his roll, so he was dead. And from that point, it was just kind of... It was kind of just over from that point. I think I kept his Tech Marine alive because I had Psychic Interrogation. But besides that, it was, yeah... It was a rough first game for the Ultramarines. But he was a gent about it, and he had a really good game. Or, well, as far as I could see, he was having... a good game despite the overwhelming power of Nids just now. But no, it was a good game to start the tournament because he was an awesome guy. My game 2 was the beginning of the Civil War arc of the tournament. My Civil War arc began with a rematch from Air. I went up against Mark and his Nids.
Oh no! No!
It was kind of oh no moment when we saw the pairings go up. Mark at this tournament, his Niz list, which I'm sure he'll go into more detail of in himself. But he was he was a different Hive fleet. He wasn't Leviathan.
He was running Behemoth.
Behemoth, that's who.
Behemoth,
Yeah. So he ran Behemoth, and I think he felt the lack of transhuman this game because he didn't have the transhuman. A lot of his big bugs, besides the stratagem that you can use, a lot of his big bugs were going down. He was definitely feeling that being missing. So yeah, it was massive just not having that.
Yeah, it's quite surprising when you think about it. When you think for some of the weaponry, it is only maybe like a 3 instead of a 4, but it's surprising how statistically
that impacts it. Yeah,
it impacts it. Yeah,
no,
you don't think about it until you don't have it.
Yeah, exactly. So Mark actually got first turn in that game, but he bounced. His first turn, he bounced. He didn't kill. He tried to go for my harpies. He didn't get them. I think he done 4 wounds to a harpy. 1 venom cannon went through. So still everything was top bracket. My turn, I retaliated into his harpies with Zoanthropes, the Maleceptor, and the Hive Tyrant that I kind of kept back. And then everything else just kind of pushed forward. And yeah, it just once again it comes down to dice. I taken out his 2 harpies. I taken out his Flyerant. I taking out. I remember what else I taken out. There's quite a few. It was quite tough for his first game anyway.
Yeah.
Or for the first turn, but after that point, it kind of just snowballed, and he just didn't have enough to bounce back with after that. But no, was a great game. You know, Mark, it's always a good game. Just I think the lack of transhuman on his side and my transhuman really did impact that match a lot. And then finishing that game, we went into round 3, and I was against Callum Rooney, a Shire Knight, and he had his Custodes. So following the arc of the Civil War, we're against Custodes, against one of our new recruits, Callum. It was a great game. Some lessons were learned from Callum. He managed to get first turn. He brought his Custodes bikes out, and he had the target of either my Hive Tyrant or my Maleceptor. Now, he was playing Emperor's Chosen and has a 4-up save against mortal wounds. So in that situation, I know what I would target as a priority for that game. But sadly, Callum didn't, and he put all of his shots into my Maleceptor.
Oh no.
Which, fair enough, he managed to kill my Maleceptor turn 1, but the Flyerant was sitting right next to it on full wounds. And in my turn, the Flyerant went forward, killed the unit of bikes, and then in the next turn, moved forward, killed another unit of bikes. And yeah, it just kind of went like that. The Flyerant did a lot of work this game. Callum was actually running the Calexis Assassin, which was kind of disruptive. But I played around it by keeping my Neurothrope well back to try and bounce the psychic powers through Synapse range. And the assassin got infected by the parasite and a few mortal wounds, put down to 2 mortal wounds, and then a unit of 3 warriors with Devourers managed to clip those last 2 off. But yeah, was a tough game because of the saves against mortal wounds. There is a lot of mortal wound output from the NIDs, and if you take out the threats that aren't mortal wound orientated, then so normally you would want to go again after the things with mortal wounds, but instead in the Custodes matchup, I think you want to go against the things that have the big guns, like the Harpies, although they are mortal wound generators. The Hive Tyrant, the Exocrine, the Carnifex, and stuff like that. Another thing to note is Callum didn't really go after my Harpies either. I still had harpies flying about the board. I think he was trying to deal with other big bugs, and these two harpies were just flying over and, oh look, I can shoot all the guns into that unit, and then fly over, I can shoot all the guns into that unit. So it was just kind of tough, really. After he lost his jet bike unit, it was he only had Sagittarium to shoot a lot of things. But no, it was a great game, and that ended my day one. So, like Connor, went on 3 wins, no loss.
So both on 3-0, which is excellent for both.
Then along came day 2.
Now along came day 2. Along came day 2. And I do believe there was a Nid versus Nid matchup on day 2, game 1.
There was a Nid versus Nid matchup following the Civil War arc.
Oh no! Don't tell me this was Cap against the newbie.
It was
Conar, the Meta Chaser Leech.
It was indeed.
Yeah, it was, sadly, yeah.
And I'll let you go and talk about how that game went, Connor.
So maybe I should just ask the first question: who got turn 1?
Yeah, that's all it needs to really ask, to be fair, and that kind of tells you exactly how that game went. Unfortunately, I believe I rolled a 4 and you rolled a 5.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
So at that point, I was like, "Oh, awesome, mate. Should we just go out and have a smoke, yeah?" Because there was really nothing else to be said, to be fair. Unfortunately, it's just the way it goes, particularly going against Leviathan mirror matches. Even more so, the fact that me and yourself, Ryan, we pretty much, bar the exception of like 1 or 2 units, we pretty much had the exact same list. I think it was, instead of you have old One Eye, whereas I have an extra Zoanthrope unit. But overall, it's pretty much, with that kind of game, who gets turn 1, and if you do get turn 1, how much damage are you doing versus how much am I actually saving? And unfortunately for me, exceptionally for Ryan, I rolled very poorly, whereas he rolled very well. So it meant that a lot of my stuff was just gone no, it wasn't really gone, but for example, you got my Hive down to 2 wounds. So it meant he had an 8-inch movement, which is just horrible.
Yeah, he was a bit buckled at that point, and then I think I'd done the same to a Harpy, and then I also killed another one.
Yes, you did. You got my Hive turned down to 2 wounds. You killed my Voracious Ammunition Harpy, and you got my other one down to like 3 or 4 wounds. So it was just devastating, because at that point we had the exact same units. So it meant that I was just immediately on the back foot, to the point that there was just no catching up from it, because you would just counter every single thing that I did. But yeah, it was a very, very quickly decided game. But it was one of those ones where he would do a certain move to me, and I'd call for the TO, and I'd be like, "Oh wait, I'm facing the TO."
Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh well, then here we go. So this is how it's gonna be."
Oh dear.
But no, there was.
You want to claim your opponent's weighted dice or weighted, yeah? Come to the TO.
Yeah, I'll check the TO for these dice rolls, eh?
They looked fine to me, mate.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. It's literally the exact same thing of I just hate playing against Ryan, because it's not even anything the fact that his lists or anything are awesome. It's the fact that he just rolls horribly efficiently, and I just, for whatever reason, I just have Shadow the Warp on top of me, and I just roll horribly. It was the same at Clash of Alba, and it was the same here. Unfortunately, my win streak gets disrupted yet again by the team captain.
Got to keep these newbies in their place, you know?
Well, that's all I've got to say is there's got to be less whinging and more winning, mate. You know that.
Yeah, I just need to get good and roll 6s. Yeah, just roll 6s.
That's it. You just got to roll 6s. And maybe if you put a feel no pain on your flyer, it might survive to a bit longer. Right?
Oh,
But hey,
I don't
who
know the
knows?
amount of damage was going through there, but I
Yeah,
actually believe he did have a 5-up feel no pain. It didn't matter.
He did, yeah.
Oh,
He
no.
did.
It just didn't make a
He did
difference.
have a 5-up feel.
Does it make a difference when you've got 6 wounds of 4 damage apiece to make? So
Oh,
it just
dear.
didn't make a difference.
Yeah.
But no, it was just one of those ones. It's just how it happened, but it was still a fun game nonetheless.
Yeah, it sounds like you've both had a really good game. It sounds like it's just going to happen, you know, that way when you're both striving for top finishes. Then it's just one of these things that it comes down to, you know, that way. I was quite surprised when I didn't meet Mark or Ryan at the RTT before, because I was expecting to play Nids at some point. But you're always that way with, as we've heard for a lot of for you guys this weekend, that a lot of us were facing off with each other.
I think it's just because of the nature of the beast, to be fair, since it was it was a Forth Valley Wargamer club, but it was very much
home turf.
a Shire Knight heavy tournament.
Home turf. So
Yeah.
after Ryan claimed the scalp of Connor again, that's 2-0, Rybo, 2-0. I'm keeping a tally.
Sorry.
It only takes one for Connor to actually take captaincy, though, so just to let you know.
So
it doesn't matter how many you won.
That actually
tension.
concluded the Civil War arc as well. You know, I went.
Well, it did for you. It did for you.
It did for me.
It did for you.
I went and I fought 4 of the Shire Knights at the tournament.
We'll go into Connor.
3.
3, yeah. So we're going to Connor's last game, and then we'll go into Rybo's last game. So Connor, you've just finished with Rybo. You've just finished with Nid. You're like, oh, I need a wee break. What's up next?
Oh yeah, I was thinking, oh right, that's just happened to me. Oh, at least I've got my Nid game out of the way. We waited till everyone was finished because obviously me and Ryan's game was over very quickly. So I had a lot of time to just kind of de-stress and just acknowledge that just happened.
And hopefully
everything's going to be fine. Yeah, I'll have a nice easy game, my last game to finish it off. And then the pairings went up. And I was against another Shire Knight, Mark, with his Nids again.
And I bet you at this point, Mark was looking so enthusiastic of having to go into Leviathan Nids again.
Oh, he was. And it was literally, as Ryan's already touched on, I think Mark really kind of missed Leviathan by the end of the tournament. Granted, he still played it very, very well. He took to the last. And effectively what he did was he took off all of his characters. So he left me with one character to actually do my psychic interrogation with. I got that off, I believe, once or twice, and then he just encircled the prey, removed the last character, so he denied me my psychic interrogation for the last couple of turns of the game. But it pretty much was that kind of sense where he was knocking lumps out of me, and I was just being able to, you know, take it a little bit more than he was when I was dishing out the damage back to him. Whereas, like, because obviously I've got transhuman, he doesn't, and it's one of those things that is so important in a Nid mirror match, because your damage output's just insane. But if you can just kind of deny a couple of more wounds, it makes all the difference in the long term, because it makes a difference even if you're not fully transhuman. The fact that if it's not transhuman, it's going to be 3s or 4s versus those 2s, and makes such a difference in the long haul of the game, especially if it keeps going on for the duration. But no, it was a really fun game. We actually had one moment where both of our harpies were pretty much parked up next to each other. I ended up killing his harpy, and he rolled a 6 on his death throws, and his harpy just pretty much death throws into mine, and we ended up killing each other. So we just, like gentlemen, just removed our harpies from the table, like just collectively. Yeah, it's good game.
That is brilliant. That is actually too good. When you're like, yes, I killed his harpy, and he's like, no, I'm taking your harpy with me.
You're coming with me, sir. But no, it was a very good game. Ended up with naturally myself winning, but it was purely down to the fact that I had Leviathan, I had that transhuman, he didn't. But it was a lesson learned anyway, I think. Currently, as the way it is now, until the points increases come. Leviathan right now is just such a strong faction to pick. Yeah.
I think, like you said before, I think if you're running big bugs, you're running things with synapse, you're running loads of chunky things, and it definitely is the best way to take them at the moment. It just Transhuman's just so nice, and then they've got the other abilities in Leviathan as well, which works very well. But that's
Yeah.
good to hear. So 4 wins, 1 loss, Connor.
Yeah,
Not a bad result.
Yeah, it's just another another echo from the past where my only loss comes from Ryan.
Well, that's it, mate. That's it. I'm sorry.
You know, sometimes it happens in the big jobs.
That's it indeed. So Ryan, you're going into your last game, 4-0.
Yeah.
And I believe your opponent was also 4-0 at this point.
It was, yeah. There was 2 opponents, or 2 people within the tournament that reached game 5, both 4-0, because it was a 30-man tournament. Yeah, it was great. I ended up against Ross with his Harlequins. He had basically troops in boats and a couple of characters.
Classic Harlequins.
Yeah, standard kind of Harlequins. So he managed to roll first turn. And all he'd done was put a Death Jester on the top floor of a building so that he could see and take a pot shot, and then made sure that the Death Jester was still not the closest, so he was getting lookouts, sir, and then called it a turn.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he kept everything back, but he also taken Stranglehold and taken a bunch of things, and he only held 1 objective. So I just moved everything up. And
as you do.
Yeah, I just kind of, taking the middle objective with the Screamer Killer, and Old One Eye and kind of Paya. And for my adaptive this game, I swapped out the rerolls to hit because he told me that I don't get any rerolls to hit against these boats. So I thought, okay, I'll just give everything in my army Heroic Intervene.
Oh, nice. That's a good choice. That would always be
a strong one.
Yeah. So had that.
Big bugs on points. Been able to Heroic Intervene. Oof.
It did come into play this game.
Oh dear.
So yeah, like I say, put the Screamer Killer and Old One Eye on the center objective, and then I believe I moved we had one of the objectives I could get at the Parasite on it behind a ruin, and the other objective he could get behind it on a ruin. So Parasite went onto the objective behind the wall, so you couldn't be shot off basically, and then some warriors ran up to then, if the Parasite should die, be able to take the objective the next again turn.
Nice.
And then on the other objective, I slow waddled a Carnifex up to it. It didn't manage to get onto it in 1 turn, but it was ready to jump onto that objective turn 2, which I was fine with because I held the centre and the right objective, and my own deployment objective, which meant I get Stranglehold. I also moved the Zoanthropes out because I noticed that his Death Jester was visible. It wasn't the closest, so he still got Lookout Sir, but Smite only hits visible targets. So I advanced the Zoanthropes and one-shot his Death Jester with a unit of Zoanthropes.
Oh dear.
Which, coincidentally, even though he hid everything, allowed me to get grind for the first turn. So, yeah, being able to snipe that Death Jester managed to get me grind. I also moved other things would have got me grind. I moved the 2 Harpies up and managed to blow up 2 boats. I don't think he had enough boats for all his troops, so 1 unit of troops was sticking out, which I then shot the 8-shot strength 5 AP -1 gun of the Harpy into them as well. So I managed to blow up 1 boat. I think 2 guys died in the explosion of it coming out, and then the little gun shot another 5-man squad and put that down to 1 man. And then that 1 man ran away. And then so he was just left with that little unit of 3 that came out the boat. From memory, I think that's what happened. And I know that 1 squad died. I just can't remember if the guns finished off 1 squad or the other. It was a busy day.
I was going to say, that sounds like a case of stop stop, I'm already dead.
Yeah, so I think a pair of boats blew up because one from one harpy, one from the other, and then one squad of troops and the Death Jester were gone in the first turn. He was still left with a ton of boats, and in his turn, he tried to bounce back by bringing 3 boats onto the centre objective where One Eye and a Screamer Killer were. And then he brought 2 boats over to the right objective where the parasite was, and his character also came out of the boat, advancing over and charged the parasite to fight for that objective, because the parasite was obsec 5 because of my warlord trait.
Nice, strong.
And then he didn't bother touching the left objective. He just kind of left that alone, the one that my Carnifex was heading towards. In his shooting phase, he kind of whiffed a lot. Not a whole lot happened. He put some what is it? It's the Melta pistol, but it's called something else. Fusion Blaster. Yeah, that's the one. He shot some of them into a Maleceptor. I think he done 3 wounds to a Maleceptor, or 4. Okay. I think not a lot to the Maleceptor, but that was about it for his turn. And I think he maybe taken 2 wounds off a Harpy, and 2 wounds off a Carnifex. And in the assault phase, he charged the parasite with that character that hopped out, killing the parasite and kind of securing that objective. And then I heroically intervened with the Screamer Killer and One Eye into the boats in the middle and blew up a boat. I then, in my turn, kind of moved up with the Maleceptor, came back the other way with the Harpies, blew up more boats, killed more troops. The psychic phase was quite devastating with the Zoanthropes and the Maleceptor being close to the middle next to those 3, well, now 2 boats that landed. So I managed to pop all of the boats in either the psychic or the shooting phase, and then whatever was left of the troops after that, I think there was 2 squads left, 1 of 2 and 1 of 4. I managed to multi-charge with One Eye and a Screamer Killer, which I killed the 2-man squad on impact with mortal wounds because I just wanted to make sure it was dead and I could focus everything onto the other one, because they do have a 4-up inv, so it's better to guarantee it since they have OBSEC. And then I managed to get the left objective with the Carnifex that turn, so I didn't even have to really bother about retaking the right objective because I had this open objective on the left, because he kind of heavily played to one side of the battlefield. So by the end of turn 2, he had 2 boats left and 2 characters. And he just tried to claim back a couple of objectives, and then in my turn 3, I wiped out everything else apart from the Shadowseer and a troop squad. And then going into turn 4, I killed the troop squad and then kept the Shadowseer alive because I had Psychic Interrogation and Grind, so I could score them in the last turn. So then in my turn 5, Psychic Interrogated, then killed, got both them, ticks in the box, and then that was the game. So I managed to win 100. No, it was 97 because I didn't Psychic Interrogate in the first turn because he hid all his characters back, so I couldn't without drawing out my Hive Tyrant.
I got you.
But no, it was a very good game. He was a gent. It was just a very rough matchup for him.
Yeah, the NID matchups seem to be that way. I know that the Harlequin troops sort of and boats do a lot of work in the arrow obsec and things like that, but when you don't move out in that first turn, you're giving up a lot of points, especially on Abandoned Sanctuaries when it's 2 points for going into the middle or shooting something off in the middle, so you've kind of got to commit to getting a bit of those points.
Yeah, it was a tough one. I can see where he was going, wanting to stall back so he can then spring out and make sure he's got enough left to try and flip the objectives. It was quite funny though, because I was saying to him about the list with the NIDs. Although there is a lot of mortal wound output, if you kind of play around it, you can reduce the mortal wound output. Like the Zoanthropes need line of sight. You need to be within 12 with the Maleceptor. that kind of thing. So if you can restrict those as much as possible, either staying out of the range of the zoanthropes that normally hang back, or avoiding 12 inches threat range of the Maliceptor, which is very difficult, you can kind of reduce the mortal wound output. But he just threw everything onto objectives, which my zoanthropes and my Maliceptor were next. So even though I said to him, it's not, the list isn't all about mortal wounds, I ended up doing a shed ton of mortal wounds to him because there was just all these targets right next to it, and it was just the way it went. But he was a gent about it, and his dice weren't doing the best for him either. The amount of saves that he was failing, and the amount of even troops dying as a boat died, was ridiculous. He was just losing them constantly. I don't think his CP or luck dice rerolled into a success any time throughout the game. There was maybe once, but his luck dice weren't doing great either. It was a very rough game.
I think it just seems to be something when you play against you, Ryan, for whatever reason.
I have the true Shadow of the Warp aura.
That's
what it is.
He's been blessed by the High Fleet.
Big Cthulhu over here. But
some say it's a Tervagon, just
yeah.
No, I think it's definitely something that can catch people out when they don't recognise that zoanthropes have inherent +3 to their cast and +3 mortal wounds for their Witchfire spells.
Yeah.
So I think that people can really get caught off when you're rolling 9 mortal wounds into them. They're like, oh, I did not see that coming from 3 little models.
Yeah. They look so innocent as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, the good old T.O. won his own tournament.
Well done. Well done. That was
like an evil person.
Well, hey, there's got to be someone that wins it, that way. But yeah, congratulations, very well done.
I know, it was a very easy tournament to run. Besides, I think the most stressful part of the tournament was prior to the tournament starting. We had a few dropouts that I had to try and replace, and trying to mantically chase after people and make sure they're still coming and all that. But when it came to the tournament itself, everyone was great. Everybody, respected the hall. Respected their opponents. They all had great games. As far as I'm aware, I wasn't made aware of any bad games or bad actors amongst everyone.
Well, I'd like to stop you there because I think Connor's already mentioned that he played you and it was bad.
Besides the T.O., but T.O. doesn't count. He's allowed to be a bad actor. It's just
I could get Mark on the phone to back this up right now.
Yeah, I tried to get a hold of the TO to complain about my 4th game, but I kept going to Ads Machine.
I'm just sorry. I'm just sorry. I only turned up when the 5th game was playing, Connor. I do apologise. However, and speaking of Ribo coming first, Connor, where did you end up finishing?
I came 2nd. The only reason being I lost my one loss in that whole weekend. But no, I came 2nd. Yeah, I was very happy with how I came. I feel like
well done. You did have. I do believe there was quite a lot on 4-1 wins. I think there was Matty from Team Scotland. There was our own Gary, who ended up getting best Forth Valley Wargamer, which is a really nice touch. It's a really nice touch. It's a club always has done in tournaments. But congratulations to you, Connor. Nice podium finish, 2nd.
And your 2nd tournament? So...
second individual,
second individual.
Not a bad effort, no.
Not a bad effort. All the ways up.
My coaching check is in the post, mate. Didn't want it?
Yeah, I might get bounced, mate.
Oh no.
Another handy thing is everybody that won a trophy was from the Forth Valley Club, which was one, really cool to see, and two, really easy for me because the trophies didn't arrive on time due to an issue with the engraving. So the trophies have now arrived on Tuesday, and I just need to go to the club and hand them to people instead of having to post them. So that makes my life easy.
So we'll do a presentation on Thursday to everyone. Because also the Don Gordon, he won Best Painted.
Yes, if anybody listening to the podcast wishes to see the Don's lovely painted Tau,
Yeah,
I
they are
shall
spectacular. They are
try
spectacular.
and
Yeah.
get his Instagram handle as I'm speaking, but he does this awesome kind of weathered look on his toe, and he, you know, you know he went the extra mile when he brought a specific fabric to put his models on to display them. This blackout fabric at the tournament. But if people want to see him on Instagram, he is under 7-inch heroes. It's 7_inch_heroes. You can see his models there, and they look amazing.
Yes. And he also got an awesome wee prize with that as well.
Yeah,
didn't
he was buzzing about his prize. He messaged me today. So he got membership to Duncan Road's Painting Academy. I believe it was 3 months free.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which
yeah.
was very generous of them, and we're very grateful of them providing that for Best Painted. And I think he's over the moon with it. He's definitely going to go check it out, and he got his account set up for it today.
Nice. No,
That's awesome,
That's
yeah.
excellent. That works really well. Well, it seems like we've had great finishes at the last two tournaments we've been at. I think the next tournament that a few of us are heading to is the Newcastle GT.
Yeah, that is the next one for us. Going down to Newcastle, I believe it is just Mark, you, and myself. Going to that
Yes.
one.
Yes. So far,
Although is Gary and Callum and Ryan, I think.
yeah, I think they are potentially.
They
I
might
think
be
they're
going as
potentially
well.
going as well. So
I'll need to
Shire
check
Knights
it.
will be out in numbers.
Yeah, it'll be good. Aside from that, there is potentially some RTTs that I will be running coming up some point in the future. We might have more details of that soon, but that'll be good to get them up and going.
Yeah. There seems to be a lot happening on the Scottish scene at the moment, which is great to see. There's RTTs up at Saltire Games. There's, I think Team Scotland are running an event on the 2nd of July through in Bathgate. There's GTs and RTTs at Dominion Air, and I'm sure Mark, who was playing, Mark Davidson, who was playing his Imperial Knights, he was mentioning something about down in Dumfries as well for tournaments.
Yeah,
So
I believe they
it's
have
just,
some going on.
it's just nice to see. It's just nice to see it's so busy up here, as
Yeah.
well as plenty of GTs down south to go to. So it's a nice time to be a 40k player.
Yeah, exactly. It's great. Definitely good to get the scene growing and whatnot in Scotland, and seeing. We actually saw a lot of fresh faces at the Forth Valley GT, which was great. Meeting a bunch of guys there, and they seemed to love it. So look forward to seeing them again in the future, because they were a great bunch of guys. I believe their team name was We Did Our Bin Chores. They were a bunch of fresh faces that I saw.
Very good.
Yeah, they were a bunch of good guys. And then obviously the familiar faces were awesome as well.
Yeah, it was nice to see Friends for Dominion Air up, and
Yep.
obviously we're always glad to see Matty at a tournament in that way. I'm just sorry I couldn't grudge him in the first round to knock him out, but
Yeah, it's all right. You'll get him next time. You'll get
I'll
Matty
get him
next time.
I'll get him next time. Oh, what's that? Matty's going to Newcastle. I better cancel my ticket, guys. Just give me a sec. Nah, never shy away for a challenge.
There we go.
But yeah. So that was good to hear from you tonight. Hopefully we'll hear from some of our other contestants in the GT and see how they were doing.
Yeah, we'll see who we can get on to talk about their games.
Yes. Hopefully, see how the other armies fared. You know that way. I don't think I've got to say I don't think my Death Guard would have fared well going up against Nids, and especially against Behemoth Nids. I'm not even going to lie. I think up against Mark's Nids that would have been quite terrifying as well. So we'll have to see. But just to add on, because we also talk about Gary and Callum and Ryan joining us. We've also got other new recruits: Craig, who runs Blood Angels; Chris, who's running Black Templars at the moment; and also James, who was at Bathgate and was running Death Guard, but also runs quite a few armies. He does like Flesh Tearers
Yeah.
as well. But who doesn't like a wee Space Marine Blood Angels Flesh Tearer army?
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's
So that's
awesome
good.
to see the group growing, and yeah, really,
As indeed. As
really
indeed,
just-
and we're always playing at Forth Valley on Thursday nights
yeah.
between
If
6 and 10.
anyone wishes to come along and have a few games of 40k and maybe learn a little bit, feel free to
Yeah.
hit us up and you can come along and check it out.
Yeah, no, that'll be awesome. Well, guys, we'll wrap it up there.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
hopefully, Connor, hopefully sometime soon, you'll beat Cap, or we'll go to an event where Cap isn't there.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah,
I think the latter's
don't
probably
worry,
the
don't
better
worry.
option.
I'll bring an easy list next time, Connor. You know, a teal can't win 2 events in a row. I think that's the rule from now on.
I think
Yeah.
what we'll do is we'll bring dice that are still in the packet, and then we'll get them.
I'll use your dice if you want. I've done that at a tournament before as well. Someone has done that to me before, and I've rolled better with their own dice. So
Yeah,
I'll get a Magneto helmet before we do it. Yeah.
Jedi mind tricks and all that as well.
Exactly.
Right.
These are not the 60s you're looking for. But on that end, Connor, you want to say?
Well, thank you very much for having me on. It's good to actually finally get onto the podcast.
Yeah.
Let's keep it
Excellent. Rival?
Good night, everyone.
And it's a good night from me, guys. Until next time. Shire Knights.
Bye.
Bye.